people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Trainer, manager, and promoter extraordinaire Steffi Bull posted this via his social media, and it reads, Terry Harper came into the gym this morning. She said to me, if no undisputed fight at junior middle, let's go straight into #1 ranked Cecilia Brækhus, hashtag the First Lady. Terry said it would be an honor to defend her WBA title against the future Hall of Famer. Future Hall of Famer is right. Before Clarissa and before Katie, Cecilia Brækhus was making history.
Fighting in front of large crowds in her neck of the woods, upwards of 10,000 people for a Cecilia Brækhus fight.
Getting the boxing ban lifted in her native Norway.
That's historical in and of itself, let alone how many times she successfully defended her alphabet titles as a defending welterweight champion. Something like 24 successful title defenses. 24, 25, just short of Joe Louis's record.
10 successful defenses of the undisputed crown. That's right. Cecilia Brækhus reigned as an undisputed champion for some years and some fights. Around 24, 25 title defenses overall. 10 of those defenses being defenses of the undisputed crown. It's safe to say that Cecilia Brækhus has already punched her ticket into the Boxing Hall of Fame at Canastota. Whatever she does now at 41 years old, having accomplished so much already, is just a bonus. And I think she would be receptive to a Terry Harper fight, the opportunity to see herself become a 2-division champion. I only question whether or not she wants that to be her next fight, because in the last 12 months, really, over a year, Cecilia has only fought for 6 rounds, and that was this past weekend.
6 rounds opposite the ring Marisa Portillo this past weekend as part of a Golden Boy promotion show.
Needless to say, there was significant ring rust for the former undisputed welterweight champion to have to shake off. Opposite the ring, Terry Harper will...
It's an uphill battle. She'll have her work cut out for her. Terry is a much younger fighter than Cecilia Brækhus by far and wide. The age gap, the fact that Terry is a younger, fresher, faster fighter with more snap in her punches, and I'd wager more power.
Power is drawn from the ground up, and you will notice that Terry Harpier, otherwise known as the Belter, she's got really big quads, meaty thighs.
She's got a solid base and a lot of core strength.
Having moved up from super featherweight to lightweight, all the way up to junior middleweight, Terry Harper, she wears the weight well, and she will have clear advantages over the aging former champion Cecilia Brækhus, who I think needs a few more rounds in the bank before she so decides to challenge for an alphabet title.
From a 6-rounder with Marisa Portillo to a championship title fight, a 10-rounder with Terry, yeah, those eggs need more bacon.
Cecilia Brækhus has been one of my favorite fighters the last couple of years, but you really can't favor her to win this thing with Terry under these circumstances. And even if she does get to have another fight, another 6-rounder or another 8-rounder,
Terry Harper would still have several advantages over her. Perhaps experience isn't one among them, but speed, youth, power,
mobility as well. Terry's got the fresher set of legs, and she knows how to use them. I like the idea of this fight. Don't know if it's going to be Cecilia's next fight, but I can definitely see it happening, because Cecilia didn't come back for nothing. She does want to fight for an alphabet title. It's just a question of how soon she wants to fight for an alphabet title.
Just south of junior middleweight, down there at welterweight, former IBF welterweight champion Ivana Habazin posted this to her social media, and it reads,
I just got the news that the IBF has ordered negotiations between myself and Jessica McCaskill for the vacant female IBF World Welterweight Championship. Let's go, champ.
The IBF title is vacant. When did that happen?
Well, that's what Ivana Habazin is saying. Who knows if something isn't getting lost in translation? Ivana Habazin of Croatia. Maybe the title's not vacant. Maybe it is. I don't know. That needs to be fact checked.
This is a winnable fight for Jessica McCaskill, it is.
Jessica McCaskill, who lost her last fight down there at 140 pounds to now newly crowned undisputed champion Chantel Cameron. Chantel had expressed some interest in running it back with Jessica at Jessica's prescribed weight up there at welterweight for the belts she holds up there. But this recent order from the IBF could stifle those plans.
The appeal of running it back with Jessica for Chantel is the opportunity to become a two-time undisputed champion. The problem is that if Jessica moves forward with that fight, it won't be an undisputed welterweight contest. The IBF title, the blue belt, will be forfeit.
It's not the only one. Very recently, the WBO ordered Chantel Cameron to take on two-time former WBO champion Christina Lenardatu of Greece down there at 140 pounds. If she moves forward or tries to with a McCaskill fight, the WBO title will be forfeit, and it will go to Christina Lenardatu. It seems that the both of these champions at super lightweight or junior welter and welter, they're under orders.
Gotta tell you, I'm not really interested in seeing Chantel run it back with Jessica. I'd rather see Chantel opposite the ring Christina, and I'd rather see Jessica get back in the winner's bracket.
She needs a rebound fight. Let her get a rebound fight before she shares the ring with somebody like Chantel, who beat her in one-sided fashion in their last fight.
It was a lopsided fight.
Former IBF champion Ivana Habazin. That's a winnable fight for Jessica McCaskill, the come-forward mid-range to inside pressure fighter that's as tough as they come. I think that fight makes a lot of sense for Jessica, killing two birds with one stone, needing a rebound fight whilst at the same time being under orders to satisfy a mandatory challenger.
I imagine that fight would look a lot like the Alma Ibarra fight.
Ivana's not the puncher that Jessica is, and she's not the mid-range to inside pressure fighter, the physical fighter that Jessica is. I think Jessica can win that fight.
Do it at a reasonable price. Stick it on the undercard of a fight that's happening here in the US of A Matchroom show.
Because if you do mean to stage a rematch between Jessica and Chantel for what would be Jessica's belts at welterweight, you at least need to get her back in the winner's bracket based on how one-sided their first fight was.
Otherwise, why do it at all? Chantel beat her decisively.
Get Jessica back in the winner's bracket, then revisit that fight. In men's welterweight news, reigning WBO champion Terrence Crawford took to his social media and stated, P.S. Errol Spence Jr., when you spin the block, let's do something that's never been done before and make the negotiations public since you are your own boss. Fuck it.
Spin the block, yet another buzzword catchphrase brought to us by Errol Spence Jr., who said he'd spin the block for the Crawford fight next year.
He's good for those little buzzwords and catchphrases that his cult of followers often parakeet and repeat blindly.
You know, like when he said Terrence was on the wrong side of the street, or that he's in any way, shape, or form a big fish.
Quote-unquote big fish, and the more recent quote-unquote spin the block.
But he's not going to be spinning any block for a Terrence Crawford fight. He's too busy spinning yarns, spinning narratives, and spinning Ferraris in the air.
We'll see, man. We'll see. The great thing is I got hella options.
You want the most though, Errol? Undisputed with Terrence, or are you moving on?
Man, I don't know. I gotta weigh my options, man. I gotta see which new car I'm gonna get. Shit.
You're gonna get another color?
Excuse me. A new car. Shit.
It's always the same thing with this fucking booze hound. Year after year, it's the same thing.
We're no closer to that fight this year than we were last year, or the year before that, or the year before that.
We're no closer to that fight now than we were before, and we won't be closer to it next year either, because you see what Errol Spence Jr. is saying, that he's got hella options and he's got to weigh them, but which one of those options has the same profile as the Crawford fight, that granted is not the biggest fight in boxing, but it's certainly the biggest fight that Errol Spence Jr. can hope to have. It's bigger than a
Thurman fight. It's certainly bigger than a Thurman fight, bigger than an Ennis fight. Jaron Boots Ennis was in the process of fighting in yet another IBF eliminator.
His last fight was an IBF eliminator. His next fight is an IBF eliminator. And who's IBF champion? Errol Spence Jr. That's who. A fight with Terrence is a bigger fight than an Ennis fight and a Thurman fight.
It's bigger than any fight at junior middle that he can hope to have if and when he moves up there, since most people have given up hope on the Crawford fight, and these are just timestamps.
A chronological record of sound bites, a chronological record of excuses and obstacles brought to us by what's supposed to be the big fish of the welterweight division in it.
Was he gonna fight at 154 pounds? That makes for a bigger fight than a Crawford fight. Who, Sebastian Fundora?
Is that why you guys matched Sebastian Fundora opposite the ring Carlos Ocampo, a common opponent between Sebastian and Errol Spence Jr.? You know what I'm talking about, the whole who did it better thing.
Is that why you guys did that? Because I'll tell you right now, fighting Sebastian Fundora, that's not as big a fight or as relevant as a Crawford fight.
At this point, I'm just waiting for an official announcement beyond what is to be the Keith Thurman fight 5 or 6 months from now, well into 2023. I'm just waiting for an official announcement beyond that fight that heralds Errol Spence Jr.'s move upstairs to 154 pounds, because once that announcement comes down, that is the official death of this fight, the Crawford fight, what was supposed to be the undisputed welterweight championship of the world.
If Errol moves up the junior middle, he's not going to fight his old buddy, Jermel Charlo. What's likely to happen is Jermel will end up moving up the middle as Errol moves up the junior middle. All those alphabet titles will go vacant, and the hope is that Errol can pick one or some of them up.
And then what he will resort to doing in place of a Crawford fight, what was supposed to be a Crawford fight, is he'll fight the likes of Sebastian Fundora by way of the WBC, maybe Bakram Murtazaliev by way of the IBF, Brian Castano or Tim Tszyu by way of the WBO.
Catch my drift. You get the gist of it.
And not a single one of those fights has the same backdrop, the same backstory as the Terence Crawford fight. Not a single one of those fights represent the same career-defining, legacy-defining fight that the Crawford fight.
If Errol moves up the junior middle, there's no point in Terence following him up there because it'll be the exact same situation. Terence would, in effect, become the most established welterweight champion and the biggest name at the weight once Errol moves up, at which point Terence can move into a potential Virgil Ortiz fight.
I would mention Jaron Ennis by way of the IBF, but he boxes exclusively on Showtime, and last time I checked, Showtime are the ones that failed to get Crawford versus Spence over the line.
Can't trust that weasel Stefan Espinoza to get the goddamn job done.
But Oscar De La Hoya, Eric Gomez, and Roberto Diaz, the good people at Golden Boy Promotions, they might look at this as an opportunity to get Virgil Ortiz a big fight on a big stage and do business with an established player, an established name at welterweight.
I mean, think about it. If Errol leaves, what's the biggest fight for Virgil? Jaron Boots Ennis?
Good fight. It's a very good fight, but it's not a big fight.
Crawford fight's bigger than that. Crawford is a pound-for-pound fighter. Jaron Boots Ennis, he isn't, in spite of a couple of overzealous fans that think he held the moon and the stars for pouncing on no-hopers.
And never mind that he fights exclusively on the rival platform. Ortiz versus Ennis is a fight that would be riddled with problems and obstacles, whereas Terence Crawford, he's a network and promotional free agent.
He's his own boss, unlike Errol Spence Jr. Errol is an employee. What do you think?
You think Al Heyman works for Errol Spence Jr.? No, it's the other way around. Errol Spence Jr. gets his marching orders from Uncle Al. He is little more than a subordinate, an employee.
That's how he likes it.
He is not the boss of anyone. He's not in charge of anything, not even his own career.
Big fish.
Big bullshit. In a scenario where Errol Spence Jr., in effect, moves up to yet another PBC stronghold at junior middleweight, the biggest name at welterweight would be Terence Crawford, and the biggest fight for Virgil Ortiz would be Terence Crawford.
Golden Boy needs content to deliver to their broadcast partner. Golden Boy needs content, they need fighters, and Crawford needs fights.
It's the next logical step once the wino of welterweight moves up to super welterweight.
Crawford versus Ortiz. Makes a lot of sense.
So before it comes to that, Virgil Ortiz must first get through Lithuania's own unbeaten up-and-comer, Stanionis, a bona fide, legitimate top 10 welterweight, a top 10 guy in the division, certainly more solid guy than any guy Virgil has fought so far.
In reference to that, Oscar De La Hoya says, I will announce a date and venue soon.
If Virgil Ortiz can go in there and do to Stanionis what he did to Michael McKinson, then unbeaten Michael McKinson earlier this year, if he can go in there and do to Stanionis what he did to Michael, that would be impressive.
Stanionis has never been beat, let alone stopped.
But then again, neither was Michael McKinson before he shared the ring with Virgil Ortiz earlier this year.
There's a first time for everything.
Michael was beat for the first time earlier this year in August. Oddly enough, it's been a more productive year for then unbeaten Michael McKinson than it has been for Virgil Ortiz. You know that Michael, he fought 3 times this year.
In March, then again in August, opposite the ring Virgil Ortiz, and more recently this month, last week, on the 17th. That's right.
Michael McKinson has already rebounded off the loss he suffered to Virgil Ortiz earlier this year, and that was Michael's 3rd fight of this year, whereas Virgil has only fought once, just once, this entire calendar year. He fought 2 times last year, only once this year. The same applies to Stanionis. He too fought 2 times last year, but only once, just once, this year.
They could both stand to be a bit busier next year.
Virgil Ortiz sports an unblemished record of 19 wins, no losses, no draws, with 19 knockouts. 19 out of 19 fights Virgil has fought in have ended by way of knockout. Needless to say, he's a heavy-handed guy, a strong puncher, and a big kid, a growing kid for this weight. He's only 24 years old.
Plays the guitar.
Hits like a freight train. He will have the edge in power opposite the ring, Stanionis, so that's not saying that Stanionis don't pack a decent-sized punch of his own.
He does. He's just not as big a puncher as Virgil.
Sporting a professional record of 14 wins, no losses, no draws, with 9 knockouts. Comparatively, I'd have to say that Virgil Ortiz really does have the better resume of the two.
Both guys were in action opposite the ring, unbeaten fighters in their last fights. You know, Virgil was opposite the ring, unbeaten Michael McKinson, and Stanionis was opposite the ring, unbeaten, then unbeaten Radzav Butaev.
One battle of the unbeatens deserves another, as one good turn deserves another. This is a great fight, though it came at a high cost, a high price. Golden Boy Promotions had to pay a pretty penny to ensure the rights to this contest, beating out TGB Promotions, that's Tom Brown, which is just another way of saying Al Heyman.
Golden Boy Promotions placed the winning bid at $2.3 million. 75% of that $2.3 million is supposed to go to Stanionis. So even if he does end up getting his fucking ass kicked, at least it'll be worth some money.
Worth his while. I think most people are expecting Virgil Ortiz to take out Stanionis. It's just a question of how he looks leading up to the potential knockout. Points for style.
It doesn't get said enough that Virgil Ortiz has one of the best, by far and wide, the best resumes for an unbeaten up-and-comer. Look at those guys.
Very good names in there. Antonio Orozco, Brad Solomon, a former champion in Mighty Mo Hooker, and a former world title challenger, 2-time Olympian in Egidijus Gavaliauskas, an unbeaten up-and-comer. A tricky one in Michael McKinson.
A stick-and-move outside jabber, a pure boxer.
As political as today's welterweight division is, I have to say that I love how they're moving this kid along. I just wish he was a little bit more active.
But I am looking forward to seeing him knock out Stanionis.